Welcome to our cross-culture negotiations workshop, prepared by Professor Ximena Muñoz and myself, Ricardo Altimira. These slides are going to have a small pause in between each slide to ensure that the audio goes okay. Thanks for your patience, and I hope that we can enjoy this brief presentation. Let me mention the topics that I would like to cover during this presentation. First, I would like to agree on the objectives for our session and the methodology that we are going to use. Then I would like to picture the different cultures using as a reference the 5 Ps. And then share with you some success factors and best practices to develop a strategy to sit down in front of a diverse counterpart, and I'll use as a reference the 5 A's. Then I will announce 3 tools, 3 very simple tools, and then we will have the opportunity to see 3 separate videos to see each of them in detail. After that, after we see those videos, we prepare a small case that we submit to your consideration. This is a case that you can take a look and do during the session. This is a case that you can do outside the session and submit us the results. This is an open invitation to exercise some of the tools. And finally, we would like to wrap up and invite you to continue enjoying the challenges of the global negotiation. Our objectives for this session are mainly to share with you some experiences on cross-culture negotiation, and also to help you define the different cultures to be able to sit down in front of these people tomorrow and avoid any conflict, and at the same time create a good positive relationship to develop win-win, if possible, win-win agreements. We also want to submit to your consideration some preparation tools and have some fun. The methodology is the typical methodology of the business school. We would like to provide you with some elements that are considered blocks where you can continue constructing your knowledge about how to negotiate in the future, especially in this 535 world where you are sitting in front of people with 5 languages, 3 countries where they live, and 5 sectors where they work. So we also want to provide you with the opportunity to exercise that with a micro case and share some best practices. When we talk about the culture, we are talking about a set of elements that people develop from the day that they are born, and they continue developing as a result of the context, as a result of their education, as a result of the work they do, as a result of their studies, etc. It is a tendency to stereotypes and talk about the Chinese culture and the Indian culture and the South American cultures and this and that. And since this is a global world, more and more and more the elements to define the culture are mixing. So we have to take into consideration several parameters. We would like to submit to you 5 Ps. The first one is the P of the passport. The P where you registered the city where you were born, the place where you were educated and raised, the place where you learn your first experiences, learn how to communicate with your peers, learn your religion and your beliefs and your values from your parents and your family and the people around. Crucial element from the passport. Second element in the passport, your age. There is a significant difference between the Y generations and the baby boomers, and that's a difference in the culture, and that's a significant challenge too. Third element in the passport, the gender. And again, women negotiate different from men. I invite you to get into TED, T-E-D, which is a famous American web where you have different people talking about different topics. And Simen and myself had the opportunity to talk a month ago about the difference between men and women negotiating. And I'll give a very quick summary. We did analysis at Reading University, UK, with 3,000 students simulating different negotiations in different business schools over 2 years. Conclusion: women negotiate better than men. Women arrive to better agreements than men. Women are considered better listeners than men. Why? Because they are accustomed to empathize more than ourselves. When I mean ourselves, I mean boys. Because they grew up in an environment where they had to pay attention to different people at the same time. Because they don't feel this eager to compete and create a battlefield into the negotiation table. So another element into the passport, the gender, will create a difference in the culture. The profession. People negotiate different if they are militaries, if they are engineers, if they are lawyers, if they were ultimately living in a company with a certain culture. So it is important to understand the profession. And when you go to negotiate in a foreign country and you have to fly 20 hours, you normally buy a little book or get into internet and check how are the Chinese, how are the Russian, how are the Brazilians, and this and that. And sometimes you even talk to your friends, go to your Brazilian restaurant to understand better the culture. Same thing with the profession. If you have to sit down in front of a doctor in biotechnology to negotiate a joint venture, it is important to understand how these people normally act, how these people normally defend their ideas, how they normally argue. So the profession is another crucial element into the culture. Third element, everybody depends on his or her experiences, and your past is very important. And you really have to put an effort to understand the past history of the people that you're going to negotiate with. Take myself, Ricardo Altimira, grew up in Argentina, graduated as an industrial engineer in Argentina, 22 years old, jump into IBM, go into the United States, and continue my career for another 11 years in New York. So ultimately, my Argentine culture was, in a certain way, we adjusted to live in New York, New England, WASP culture for my job for 11 years. And then I moved to Spain, and I spent 25 years in Spain. So my past is defining certain things. Yes, I learned certain things in the school and the way that Americans do business, but now in Spain, we close business at the restaurant. We sit down and develop the terms and conditions in the napkin. We don't need 24 lawyers and 24 different functions at the table to close the deal. That's our approach. And you have to understand not only the city where I was born, but also the places where I pass by and create a certain element in my culture. And the power, crucial element in negotiation. I'm sure that we already discussed that. I'm sure that you pay attention to the power differences in the table, and you prepare very well when you have to negotiate with someone with a significant power in front of yours. And it's important to understand also how this power is viewed and how this power is implemented in the respective cultures. It is different in cultures where there is a significant degree of respect for the authority than in countries that are more informal. Therefore, if you go to the Middle East to negotiate, you have to understand that the sheikh is someone that has a tremendous power to decide over the rest of the team, and if you don't get his or her personal attention, it will be very difficult to close your deal. So power is also another element that we have to take into consideration when you try to define and picture the culture of your counterpart. And last but not least, the protocol, the way we close the business, our marketing practices. When do we get the lawyers? How many pages of documents do we have to close the deal? What is the way that we introduce ourselves? When do we have the lunch? When do we have the final negotiation? Is it before the dinner? Is it at the dinner? When do we bring the last maximum authority into the table? understanding the protocol of the country and the region and the place and the company, because certain large important corporations like Apple or IBM or Google or have their own individual protocol. When you picture your counterpart in front of you, you have to pay attention to all those elements and try to learn about that as much as you can. We'll go back to this topic. Let me get into the next slide. Let me talk about the success factors, and we group them under 4 A's. Imagine that you have to negotiate with someone from a significantly different culture. You took your flight for 20-something hours to get into this next place where you're going to open your business, do a joint venture, expand your startup, etc. And you know that there are significant differences between your culture and the one of your counterpart. So you have to decide. And the strategy or the decision that you have to take can be summarized into 4 A's. Number 1, I adopt. I adopt the culture of the persons where I'm having to do business. Very often, if I'm going to another country, if I'm going to sell to another country, if I'm going to insert my company into another corporation, I have to adopt their culture. When we Spanish negotiate with Japanese, and I spent a significant amount of my time when I was working in IBM in Japan, negotiating with Japanese people, having very, very many people at the table, having a significant authority structure there, having to respect this consensus approach that in general Japanese offer to the counterpart at the negotiation. Sometimes you have to adopt and have to go into the culture of the other person. In Spain, we say, let me put my kimono to go to negotiate to Tokyo. The other possibility is the other way around. You can ask, suggest, encourage, maybe force the other party to adapt your culture. And you say, hey, my company is buying from yours. I would like you to understand that in our company, we do business this way. We don't go with a tie, we do this, we do that. So often you can encourage the other person to adapt your culture, depending on the power and depending on the situation. The third possibility, the safest one, is the one where you authorize someone to negotiate for you. You delegate the negotiation because you consider that even though yourself are the most qualified person to understand the terms and conditions, there is someone else that does not belong to your company but knows the culture, knows the sector, has closed many deals with this type of people, and can really navigate in this culture much better, speaks the language, can go to the restaurant and order the proper food and enjoy the food with your counterparts. So this is the moment where you really have to rely on your lawyers. Lawyers are greatest intermediate people to help you to close your deal, and you stand up in the back office, help the people get into the final decision, but let the middle person to do that for you. Very often when you do not understand the language of the people that you're going to negotiate with, and this with this tremendous presence of Asians and in particular Chinese, and in particular in my country, Argentina, we have a wave of Chinese investments and Chinese presence as a result of an agreement to facilitate the visas from the president of Argentina and the president of China. So there is a lot of deals that you have to close with people that do not speak your language. So it's important to have someone that speaks the language, understands the codes, understands the marketing practices, etc., etc. And the fourth possibility is just to go there and play it by ear and adjust. When you go there and play it by ear because you consider that you have enough experience, or you don't want to risk, or you really enjoy the possibility to make mistakes and correct, the important thing is that you ensure that your message come across. Maybe the third time that you repeat the same thing in a different way to reconfirm that your counterpart understood that is the best success factor. But the crucial element is to listen to the other party, and to listen, as Osho The famous Indian guru from Pune used to say, you have to listen with your ears, you have to listen with your eyes, and you have to listen with your heart. That's the moment where you can really ensure that you understood the other party, empathize with them, and then you can go for your win-win agreement. I would like to introduce 3 tools that are going to be explained in 3 separate videos. And the first one is design thinking. Design thinking is a well-known methodology originally used by architects and designers and now very much adopted by the business world. And this is bringing me great memories from 2012, me arriving to UTS under an honorary appointment and meeting with Dr. Roy Green, the dean, and having the invitation to work on design thinking during my stay. And all of a sudden, I start learning, start enjoying, and lately falling in love with this methodology. Something tremendously simple, just using common sense and architects and designers methodology of ideate, use prototype, invite the right people, empathize, etc., etc., etc. Great tool that I invite you to go deep into that and use it to generate several options of mutual benefit. Let me emphasize the words options of mutual benefit. That has been one of the 4 main pillars of the Getting to Yes that most of us are familiar with, dated back to 1983 by professors created the project on negotiation at Harvard that created a before and after in terms of negotiation. And one of the pillars was propose options of mutual benefit. Design thinking is a great tool to propose options of mutual benefit. The second tool that we'd like to submit to your consideration is a profiler. As the name indicates, is a way to profile your counterpart through a list of questions that you prepare to learn about your counterpart. We say preferably before start negotiating. If you have a complicated deal after 20 hours of flight, you can spend a couple of hours in an informal breakfast, conversation, visit to a museum, chit-chat about the sector, and try to learn about your counterpart. Learn about your counterpart means that you have your antennas on, oriented to the other person, and try to get as much information about the way that this person reacts or have an attitude towards the time, towards the risk, towards the documents, towards the arguments, towards authority, towards decision-making, etc. The attitude of a person in regards to those elements is a tremendous definer of his or her culture. And your responsibility is to learn about that and to provide the necessary platform of questions and topics to chat to understand that if possible. And the third element is my favorite one. We call it stakeholder canvas. And the stakeholder canvas, as its names indicate, is just a one page, one simple element where you picture the different parties that are affected by the deal. When you picture different parties and you put all the elements, everything you know about them, you can understand that there is certain information missing, and you can also understand the dynamics among the different counterparts. And that's an interesting part to prepare your strategy. You'll see it in the video, and then once you get the different proposals for each of those counterparts, you have to evaluate and cost and value those options of mutual benefit. Let me get into the next topic. This is a template for you to utilize when you decide to use the profiler on your negotiations. And again, this is another template for you to consider when you decide to use the stakeholder canvas for your coming negotiations. And now, let me submit to you a mini case that we normally enjoy to do with our students. And you can do individually, you can do during the session, you can do after the session. You can do after the session and submit to us via email to cross-check on the different questions that you create. I'll leave it up to you the way that you can handle this. Is a case that normally takes 5 to 10 minutes. And the idea is the following, that you can exercise the art of questioning. And if you are in a group and you want to check this with your neighbors, or you want to create a small team and do it in a work, it's also interesting to have this cross-learning experience. Let me tell you the scenario of the case. Imagine that you are in Singapore. There is a conference on big data. Big data, one of these super sexy topics about putting in a tremendous data warehouse everything you wanted to know about everybody and were afraid to ask, from social networks into CRMs, etc., etc. And then with very sophisticated tools, you get into this data mining and get everything you wanted to know about everybody. So imagine that you're in this conference. At the end of the conference, there is this gala dinner, and all of a sudden you are the CEO of an outsourcing company, and you sit down next to the CFO of a European logistic company. This CFO belongs to a company that may be a fantastic target for you and your company to do outsourcing. So immediately your mind starts wondering, how can I impress this person about our company? How can I learn about this person? How can I learn about the person's company, etc.? The task is to write a list of questions. Number one, to break the ice, which is the typical conversation about the dinner, the food, the drinks, the city, the conference, etc. And then write a list of questions to know your counterpart. What is the purpose of writing a list of questions to know your counterpart? That you get into the habit, like a journalist, to learn about the other person, to pay attention, because a very simple question that relates to the university where you study may give you a clue about the person negotiation style, the person areas of interest, etc. When you write this list of questions, after tomorrow, when you get into another negotiation, you may have this checklist in your mind and you may use it to know your counterpart better. That's part of the exercise, and I hope that you enjoy it, irrespectively of the way that you are going to do that. And finally, let me suggest that as a conclusion of these conversations that we're having today, the videos that we're seeing, maybe the case that you exercise, you take a look at yourself and identify a couple of actions that you can do when you sit down with your counterparts, maybe 3, the top 3 that you derive from this session today at UTS. That also you take a look at the way that you prepare your negotiation and identify a couple of actions that you're going to exercise when you prepare for your next negotiation. And finally, every time that we go to one of these management skills workshop, there are certain things that we would like to change or adjust, etc. So take a look at things that you would like to improve and increase into your own DNA as a businessman or businesswoman. Let me thank you for your patience. Unfortunately, I didn't have the opportunity to be at UTS with you today, but I hope to do it at some point of time. You do have our emails for anything that you may need, and I hope that you enjoy this small presentation and will be in contact with you. Thank you very much.